Welcome to The Week Ahead, a podcast by SBM Intelligence. I'm your host, Veronica Pana Igube. Every Saturday, we explore stories that are shaping our continent. First, Nigeria's government has proposed a 5% excise duty on telecom services, gaming, and betting as part of a new tax reform bill. This will impact both postpaid and prepaid telecom services, while currency transactions involving rate differences will also face excise duties. How will this new tax burden affect customers and businesses? And what could it mean for the Nigeria's digital economy? Then, the Dangote Refinery missed its petrol supply target, delivering only 148 million liters instead of 575 million liters between mid-September and early October. This raises concern about its ability to meet Nigerians' energy demands. What are the underlying challenges and how might this affect fuel availability and prices in the coming months? Finally, we move on to Jumia's exiting South Africa and Tunisia to focus on more profitable markets like Egypt, Kenya, and Nigeria, citing economic challenges and strong competitions in those regions. Will this strategy shift improve Jumia's profitability? And what impact will it have on e-commerce landscape in Africa? Joining us today for further insight is Sheyi Owojulube. Welcome, Sheyi. Thank you for joining us today. So let's
Thank
start
you very
with,
much, Veronica.
thank you. So let's start with the excise duty. How will a 5% excise duty on telecoms, gaming, and betting change the way Nigerians use these services, especially in the digital economy?
Well, to answer your question, I think we should first establish what excise duties are. It's a type of tax that is imposed on goods produced within a country rather than imported goods. Right. So for Nigeria, the new rule or part of the tax reforms that are currently being carried out by the Tinubu administration is the proposal of a proposal to introduce excise duties on telecom services, on gaming, and on betting. In the last 4 years, we've seen that the betting industry, especially, and the gaming industry, has recorded a boom in Nigeria, and it's becoming widely popular. So, imposing set on these kinds of sectors or industries is not a bad thing per se, especially because given the disadvantages of gambling, of betting, people and countries worldwide often, it's not unusual to see countries impose heavy taxes to discourage active participation in these industries. And sometimes those kind of taxes are called sin taxes, right? So we have such examples for tobacco products, on cigarettes, on cigars, and even on some expensive alcohol drinks, right? There are such taxes that are called sin taxes. And because of the sheer volume that's that the betting and gaming industry, especially in Nigeria, has enjoyed in the past few years, it is not unusual that the government would also want a piece of the cake, right? However, for those in the telecom sector, they would definitely kick against this, especially because the telecom sector is one sector that has complained about the multiplicity of taxes in Nigeria. They complain that they have to pay taxes to the federal government, they have to pay taxes to the state government, and they still have to pay I'm trying to remember now, but there's this charge that they have to pay when they want to lay cables across states. right? So, and in recent times, there have been campaigns from the telecoms industry practitioners that they want to increase their rates, the core rates, the data cost, that they want to increase it because they also suffer vandalism of their cables, and all of this accounts to higher cost of operations for them. So a new tax on telecom services in Nigeria is something that may not go down well with the practitioners and even with the consumers, because at the end of the day, this kind of tax adds to the production costs of the industry players, and so they then pass on this additional costs to the final consumer.
It's interesting that you spoke about the telecom sector and you know how they had already been facing challenges in that aspect of double taxation. So I was going to even ask you, and I think you spoke a bit about this, saying, do you think that the businesses, that the telcos would absorb these new taxes or they would push that cost to the customers? And also, will the added duty on currency transaction, how might that affect Nigeria's ability to stabilize its exchange rates and manage inflation as well?
Well, definitely a new tax will not help Nigeria manage inflation, right? Because inflation is as a result of an increase in the cost of goods and the prices of goods and services. So a new tax, which will ultimately be transferred to the final consumer, would mean that an increase in costs, and that would also mean higher inflation. Right. So since we can establish that, as regarding stabilizing the economy and managing inflation, the CBN is already trying to do that using the orthodox monetary policy tools, like raising interest rates and all of that. But we've seen that it has not done a lot. That has done very little in managing inflation. So, in usually it requires a mix of both monetary policy tools and fiscal policy tools to stabilize an economy. So, while the CBN is doing what it can, those on the fiscal side, right, from the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of to help fight inflation, right? So a new tax will not do that. It would be higher burden for Nigerians whose incomes are already under immense pressure. So this will definitely not help to manage inflation or stabilize the economy.
Thank you, Shay, for those brilliant insights. So now let's move on to the Dangote Refinery. We know that the Dangote Refinery had promised big things for Nigerians, especially our energy independence. What do you think went wrong, and why is it delivering so far below its petrol supply targets?
Well, um, we're not inside the Dangote refinery, and the Dangote refinery has not come out to say what exactly is wrong or why they have not been able to meet with their targets. But this is not a good sign for the sector.
So could this
This is not,
short,
sorry, yeah, this is not
okay,
a good sign for the sector that the refinery cannot meet its target, especially when Aliko Dangote engaged in a war of words with the NNPC when the refinery was going to start its operations.
yeah, yeah. So could this short like fall push back Nigeria in relying heavily on imports? And how soon might customers feel the impact at the pump prices as we're already seeing right now?
Well, so right now, the saving grace, well, which is not so much of a good thing, is that um, consumption or the demand flow has dropped. giving the
So now let's move over to the Dangote Refinery. Dangote has promised big things for the Nigerians' energy independence. What went wrong and why is it delivering far below its petroleum target? Um, could this shortfall push Nigeria back to relying on heavily imports, like importing? And how soon might customers feel the impact at the pump price? Shay, over to you.
Sorry, I did not know I was muted. Okay, so as regarding the Dangote refinery, it's surprising to say the very least that the refinery is not has not even been able to meet up to 50% or fulfill up to 50% of the orders placed, especially given the stance that Aliko Dangote took when the refinery was starting up and all the promises or all the things it told Nigerians about the refinery and meeting all of Nigeria. So I was saying that as regarding the Dangote refinery, it is surprising that the refinery has not been able to meet up to even 50% of the orders that were placed, especially given the stance that Aliko Dangote had at the beginning when the refinery was starting its operations and what Aliko Dangote told Nigerians about the refinery meeting all of Nigeria's petrol needs and even having excess left to export to other countries. The refinery has not come to tell us what is wrong or why they've not been able to fulfill these orders, but we hope that it can quickly be resolved going forward.
Yeah, I mean, that was the next thing I wanted to ask you. Like, do you think this is just temporary? Is it a temporary hiccup, or does it hint to a larger structural issue with the refinery's operations?
Well, it's hard to say if it's a hiccup. We know that there was a fire incident early and some months back at the refinery. Although at the time the refinery said it was a minor incident and it did not affect any of their major facilities. But we hope that it's a hiccup, especially because I don't think it would be a larger structural issue because the refinery is the largest single train refinery. So we at 650,000 barrel per day capacity, definitely should be able to meet up with these orders. But it is not unusual, again, if I must add, that when such large facilities are coming on board, they come on board in stages and in phases. So not to make excuses for them, it may be that they are gradually launching their machines in phases, but it would be good if the refinery could come out and let Nigerians know what is going on exactly.
Thank you. There it is. Let's just be hopeful and see what happens going forward with the Dangote refinery. Now let's move on to Jumia's exit. So Jumia is exiting South Africa and Tunisia. Now, Jumia is pulling out of these countries. What does it say about their viability of e-commerce in these regions, as well as do you think that this retreat is a smart move to refocus on growth, and does it reflect a deeper challenge in Africa's e-commerce space?
Well, when we're talking about e-commerce in Africa or in sub-Saharan Africa, it's a tricky topic, especially because we know that when you compare it with the European and the Western markets, the reason e-commerce thrives in such regions is because of the level of infrastructural developments that they have the credit system that supports consumer spending, right? Those are some of the things. Although those things, some of those things also exist in South Africa. For example, South Africa is one of Africa's, or is perhaps Africa's most developed economy, right? But like the Jumia CEO, Francis Dufay said, he said there are competitive challenges and there are macroeconomic challenges. Nigeria is a challenging market for any business, but when you compare it to Nigeria, Jumia is the, or should I say, was the first e-commerce business to gain ground and quickly gain prominence in Nigeria. So they have that first to come advantage, if I may put it like that. But in South Africa, there are more indigenous and more and larger businesses that have been operating in South Africa even before Jumia started in South Africa. So every business will do what is best for them, and scaling back to focus on countries where they have more competitive advantage is only the right thing to do when a business is struggling.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I also wanted to, you had spoken a bit about it, but I also wanted you to just focus a bit about more details of it. With Jumia deciding to double down on markets like Egypt, Kenya, and Nigeria, how will its departure impact customers and the competition in South Africa and Tunisia? And could Jumia's exit signal bigger problems for online retail in Africa, or is it just part of a larger shift in its strategy for profitability?
Well, going back to what the Jumia CEO said, right, when it was talking about that. So I think that it's an issue, not don't let me call it a problem now. It's an issue of reallocating resources. So South Africans will be fine. They have we have a number of South African commerce businesses here in Nigeria, right, that are of South African origin that's were making waves, right, in Nigeria. ShopRite, for example, it's of South African origin, although now they've exited their business in Nigeria, but they're still in South Africa, right? So so the South African consumers, the customers will be fine. There are other e-commerce businesses there that can fulfill whatever need they have. As to whether it's a signal of a bigger problem with e-commerce in Africa, like I said earlier, e-commerce thrives on certain things, right? So, for example, in the US, you have the postal service, right, that delivers. So a lot of Amazon has its very large delivery company, right? DHL. You have these large freight businesses, these large delivery logistics. Yes, that's the word. Logistics businesses that can help to transmit or transport whatever um, goods needs to be delivered to customers. In China, you already have robots and drones making deliveries, right? And that shows the kind of level of sophistication of infrastructure in those areas. So Africa definitely has an infrastructure problem, and this will then translate to the success or the challenges that any e-commerce business will face, right? For example, in Nigeria, any e-commerce business will struggle with delivering goods from the south to the north or bringing in goods from the north down to the south because of the roads, the state of the roads, because of the insecurity challenges, the petrol hike and scarcity. You all of these things affect logistics because goods need to move. And when goods cannot seamlessly move, it's a problem, right? So, number one is that in Africa, generally, the infrastructure problem already limits how well an e-commerce business can fare, right? The second thing, which I don't anticipate is the case in South Africa, is that consumer spending, how much disposable income do consumers have? If the consumers are struggling to meet their daily needs and are trying to edit their lifestyle to deal with rising costs and inflation, that will definitely affect how much they have to spend on shopping therapy, retail therapy. So those are some of the issues that can affect e-commerce businesses in Africa. And there's also the issue of the exchange rates, right? And the inefficiencies around the maritime sector in Africa. So all of these issues, when combined, it's a huge mountain for any e-commerce business to surmount.
Thank you very much, Shay, for those insights. Thank you for joining us on today's episode. To all our listeners, this podcast is by SBM Intelligence. You can access our podcast by searching for SBM Intelligence anywhere you find podcasts. For further insights on our work, you can visit our website at sbmintel.com. Remember to connect with us on our social media platforms. You can find us on X, Facebook, and LinkedIn at SBM Intelligence. Thank you for today, and thank you for listening.